Thanks so much for staying and welcome back. Now, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has charged finance ministers of the G20 countries to take advantage of its African partnership with Germany to transform the economy of their countries. Now, the partnership between the group of 20 African countries and Germany seeks to support the economic growth of Africa and alleviate poverty on the continent. At the opening of the first African summit in Accra, Dr. Bawumia stressed the need for members to utilize available resources in areas of agriculture, oil and gas, among others, to improve the standard of living for their citizens.
We appreciate that to encourage the type of private investment that is needed, we must promote an environment of transparency, reduce tax burden, formalizing the informal economy, financial inclusion, amongst others. Distinguished guests, the Compact with Africa is an initiative of the G20 that can only be applauded. At the same time, we need to own and drive the implementation of the Compact with Africa. We need to be ambitious and bold. What we are doing with the Compact with Africa is not something that is being dictated to us. It is something that we want to do, and therefore we have ownership of and should have ownership of. For our government, there is a sense of urgency for economic transformation in order to meet the needs of citizens in a rapidly changing world. Let us use the Compact to harness our transformational opportunities. I understand that our partners at the African Center for Economic Transformation believe that economic transformation is possible in a generation. This is the kind of bold vision we need to drive the Compact with Africa as well. Let us harness our capacity to learn from each other and improve.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is confident about the development of the private sector in its quest to achieve the objectives of the G20 partnership.
The CWA provides us the opportunity to make faster progress on what we are already doing by coming together, learning from each other, and motivating each other. So I have this dream. I have this dream of an economic transformation, as the VP said, in this generation. A dream of both economic and political sovereignty for Africa, a dream in which our value add to our resources really are leveraged to support us. This is an opportunity we must seize. I hope by the end of the day, each one of us can walk away with the following: at least one new insight on how our country can better take advantage of the CWA to help in its economic development, at least one example that we have learned from another country of how we can tackle an implementation challenge that our country is facing under the CWA, a strengthened resolve to work to significantly increase FDI and private infrastructure investment in our country, a clear sense of being a member of a community of practitioners, a club with the confidence that when needed, we could reach out to other members to bounce off ideas on how to tackle a policy or implementation problem we may be facing. I also hope we can make some clear decisions on how to build and sustain a peer learning platform to deepen and sustain the progress we would have made today in making the CWA work for us.
All right, so we'll bring you some more details on the first African summit in our subsequent business bulletins. Now, away from that, government will be signing a syndicated loan with some banks in London by the end of September this year as part of measures to reduce interest accrued on loans from the central bank to pay farmers for their produce. Cocoa Board has had to pay about 22% interest rate on a $200 million loan it contracted from the central bank to purchase cocoa beans from farmers. But Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Owusu-Efik-Yakoto, is hopeful the new syndicated loan will see the interest come down to about 2.5%. The minister was speaking at the sidelines of the inauguration of a 7-member board of the Cocoa Marketing Company in Accra.
This is the first time Ghana Cocoa Board is having to go out and borrow money at 21%, 22% to pay farmers for the produce. That is how bad the industry has become. Cocoa board is so big, it cannot go to commercial banks, so it goes to the central bank to borrow, and the prevailing rate is what I'm quoting to you, the local. Don't forget that we are just at the point of signing the syndicated loan, which we've done for the last 26 years. That's why the chief executive is not here. They are abroad, and hopefully by the time they come, we will have signed this, and then next month, later on this month, we will have these access to these low interest rates, so 2.5%, 3% borrowed on the London and in the syndicated banks, so that we can have that money available to start operating, buying, purchasing from farmers and carrying out their marketing activities.
Now, the country's returns on investments made with crude oil revenue has reached 23 million cedis. This is what Joy Business has picked up after going through the petroleum holding account held at the Reserve Bank of New York. There's more in the following Business Desk report.
The $23 million return or interest was on the total money put into the stabilization fund since Ghana started crude oil production. The report showed that since 2011 to June 2017, a little over $705 million was put into the stabilization fund, which was meant to cushion consumers when petroleum prices are high on the market. However, checks with the account showed that just $280 million is left in the account, raising questions about how these funds were utilized. When it comes to the Heritage Fund, which is meant for future generations, some $293 million which was put into that account has reached $311 million. However, there are questions about the returns gotten and whether the laws covering how the money should be invested or reviewed.
Turning our attention now to the downstream sector of the petroleum industry, tanker drivers, after calling off a strike on salary issues, are threatening to lay down their tools again if transporters are unyielding. On Monday, the drivers called off the strike after a crunch meeting between National Petroleum Authority (NPA) drivers and the transporters. Correspondent Kwame Yanka reports the drivers are dissatisfied and are still threatening to another boycott.
At that crunch meeting on Monday, another memorandum of understanding among all parties to ensure that transporters fulfill their obligation of paying the drivers was signed. But the tanker drivers say they will repeat their action if the tanker owners do not pay their base pay and allowances. George Nyauno is the chairman of the Ghana National Petroleum Tanker Drivers Union.
Clearly, as I said, if MPA did his best as it was done yesterday, and we, the drivers, wait patiently, and we did not hear anything from them, our salary has not been paid to us, then we will advise ourselves, because we have already reported this issue to the His Excellency the President.
You say you advise yourself, what exactly will you do?
Yeah, we will put the trucks are for them. We will put our tools down, because our licenses are for us. People who are doing that, I'm surprised, because all of them, they have children at home, they have parents whom they feed. So how can somebody's son work for you and you giving him base salary, you refuse to pay? So I'm surprised. I'm surprised. Because if they don't pay, how can they work for MPA for the MPA to pay them? Because once they also work as contractors and MPA, the government paid them, the laborers who work for you as drivers must also be paid.
The tanker drivers' action affected a number of key stakeholders, including Tema Oil Refinery, TOR. On daily basis, TOR's gantry loads over 120 tankers. However, only 3 tankers were loaded Monday evening after the strike was called off. When Joy News visited TOR premises Tuesday, 35 tankers had been loaded as at midday. Public Affairs Manager of TOR, Dr. Kingsley Intribuisiako, says everything is on course now.
Fortunately, the strike has been called off, and as you can tell, work is progressing steadily and everything is moving on smoothly. All things being equal, we should be able to achieve the daily target. But the day is still in progress, so it's going to be very difficult to speak to future happenings. But if there's no strike as there was yesterday, I don't think anything is going to hamper. But like I said, we would have to wait till the evening to do the calculations to find out if we're able to meet the daily target or not. It's Tor's gantry is up and running. And if I say the gantry, I mean the depot, where the trucks or the tankers or what we call the BRVs come and load. That is up and running, and I'm sure your cameras have captured it, so everything is on course.
The tanker drivers say they will advise themselves in the coming days if the transporters do not comply with the agreement signed. Kwame Yankes report for Joy News.
You're live on the marketplace. Let's take a breather here for an investment tip.
Investment Tips is brought to you by Daffing Finance, Deposits, Investments, Borrowings and Advisory.
What is an investment? It is the conversion of assets, usually money, into a security or enterprise with the objective of preserving the amount of capital as well as earning a reasonable return or percentage on it at a regular interval. Do you know there are broadly 4 types of investment or financial holdings? Let's start with shares or stock or equity investment securities. Shares or stock or equity investment securities. This is an investment representing part ownership in a company. Dividends and capital gains are the returns to expect. Fixed income securities. This is employment of funds in securities or an enterprise in which returns, whether dividend or interest, is a fixed amount.
Investment Tips was brought to you by Daffing Finance, Deposits, Investments, Borrowings and Advisory.
Thanks for staying. Welcome back. EcoBank has laid off over 150 workers. Patricia Sapo is Regional Head Corporate Communications Marketing at EcoBank, who confirmed reports of the layoff, maintains it is due to digitization of most processes at the bank. She spoke with Joy Business Bismarck Ausa.
We have a digital strategy, and that digital strategy is to migrate all our clients onto our digital platforms. And therefore, we have a lot of hands that we thought we needed to disengage. We have disengaged 181 outsourced staff members. 181 outsourced staff members, because we have a contract with the agency, and that contract is not to retain them, perpetually. It's just as and when the need arises. And with our digital platforms, we no longer require their services. But as and when it becomes necessary, we will always go back and get whoever we want to come in, fill in the gap. The rationale behind outsourcing is that you probably do not need a permanent staff. You want somebody to perform a task for you for a short time. And therefore, you go to an outsourced agency to provide you somebody to work with temporarily. And this is something that is done all over the world. So it's not new to Ghana, and it's not new to the banks.
All right, so let's now turn our attention to our major pick for the day. And Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has been speaking on the extension of the IMF program. And he says reactions by donors and some investors put more pressure on him to deliver rather than be complacent. Some of the country's donors have indicated their preparedness to fast-track disbursements because of the extension program. Business associations and even some civil society groups have also described the development as good for the economy. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta tells Joy Business it is a sign these actors would respond when the right thing is done.
We inherited an IMF program that had derailed. So thinking through that you can end in April was somewhat impractical. But I think what we need to appreciate was that the President was quite emphatic that the November 2018 budget will be done with the IMF, which in effect means that the 2018 period would be the budget cycle in which what we had agreed to in November will go through. And he wants to make sure that by the end of December 2018, we do not have the IMF program anymore. So we had been logged in by the very nature of the timing anyway. And also you and I are aware that instead of being at about 3.5%, we're at 9.3% budget deficit. And so to correct it, you're going to have to work through that cycle. So I'm not sure, and for what is the average person looking for, George? Macro stability, get inflation down, make sure there are resources for people to do their work. And I think we have lived, at least even these 8 months, to prove that that's what we are committed to doing.
What would you make of people who would say that government, and not you, you've engaged at the personal level, and I know your stance on it, but communications from other interested parties in government, they are not truthful about this whole idea about the program being extended or not being extended?
What do you mean? I don't understand the fact of not being truthful.
Because initially there were reports about the fact that this program would be extended and that it cannot be completed in the original time space, but we got the understanding that no, we are sticking to the program.
So George, why are we discussing this? The reality is now clear that we are ending in December 2018, period.
Okay.
And beyond that, it really is, are you guys going to be able to maintain the momentum that you've started?
Can you?
I think that we must, and we can, and we have to.
All right, so that was Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta speaking with George Wiafe. Now, the country could indeed be getting more inflows from donors as well as investments from some private firms. This has been influenced by what some of Ghana's development partners are describing as prudent management of the economy and the decision to extend the IMF program. Some of the country's investment partners have also told Joy Business they could be upping their capital for the country because of what extension of the program would mean for the economy. Let's now hear from the head of EU delegation to Ghana, William Hanna, who is also promising to fast-track some disbursement of the IMF program extension.
We'll have the technical meetings. You referred to the funds which are available, and that, for example, would be one of the projects which we're funding, and there are lots of others. We recently launched the agriculture program, which is 50% of our funds for the European Development Fund are focused on agriculture. And we launched the first part of that. I was up in Wa, Upper West region, launching one of the projects which is also working with smallholders up in Upper West to identify products for which there's a big market in Europe and also in the region. And that started as well. So that's another part of our program. So the projects are continuing. The idea is that we bring together our development assistance and the trade access to try and encourage the private sector to play its role. I think it's going well, and I think we'll have the first technical discussions in September.
So we started drawing down the funds as Ghana, or there are certain things that we need to do before we can access that fund to help absorb the expected shocks?
Already funds are being used. So there seems to be some idea that there's some fund that is not being used. All the funds which we have are being used, and it's the work of our delegation. It's what we're doing. We're just going to have a meeting in a few minutes to discuss our programs to accelerate those. And indeed, with the Minister of Agriculture, we recently had good discussions on the use of those funds. As I say, half of our funds are dedicated to agriculture in the north of the country, where there's a lot of potential, and we've managed to accelerate those.
What do you make of the performance of the economy so far in the first 6 months of the year? We've seen fiscal consolidation, government cutting down on expenditure. The problem has been revenue, and for
development partners like you. What do you make of how things have gone so far, first 6 months of the year?
Well, I think it was interesting to see the presentation to the Parliament and to see how that went. I think there are some good signs. The president of the African Development Bank was recently in town and was highlighting some of them. The good signs are we see inflation does seem to be continuing its downward trend. Growth looks to be picking up, mainly in the oil sector, which is good news, but it would be important that it would be more widely spread growth. The debt as part of GDP is declining, although that's because GDP has been re-estimated, but okay, that's good. And so I think there are some encouraging signs. I think the important thing would be to sustain that over a longer time. And I think we've always been concerned, and you know that we were concerned about the deficit, the fiscal deficit.
All right, so let's still stay further on the IMF extension issues. And the Association of Ghana Industries has described as prudent the decision to extend the IMF program. According to the association, this is critical to help consolidate investor confidence in the economy, which would impact positively on their operations. Let's now get the understanding further on this. And we are joined on the line by Alhaji Mahama Idrisu, who is an investment analyst. He joins us live, actually, a live feed from Jolu, who will help us understand some of the issues regarding the IMF extension. Thank you for your time, Alhaji.
Hello?
All right, so if you can hear me, how would this development help boost investor confidence, and what will be the impact on the economy?
Thank you, and thank you to your listeners. First of all, we have to know the reason why the ECF program came. What it was supposed to do is to restore the debt sustainability and macroeconomic stability, to actually create jobs, increase growth, and also protect social spending. And this was as far back 2013. And when you look at what it was meant for and what it wanted to achieve, it calls for industry to be happy that it's been extended. What was it supposed to achieve is to actually help protect fiscal adjustment and protect priority spending, and also to rebuild the external buffers of the country and safeguard the financial sector. Having come for their review, what they actually look at, especially in protecting or safeguarding the financial sector, is actually to look at what the banks are doing, the increase in NPL. They praise the central bank for actually looking at those things, the capitalization, new capitalization that banks are supposed to do, and also to look at merging and also encouraging people to raise additional capital. So that aspect of the achievement that they wanted has been done. It also affords government to actually look at social spending and also to widen the tax net, give some fiscal space for the government to embark on the infrastructure development. And so the AGI should be happy, because what it does is to tell investors that if they bring money, the economic situation in regards to their fundamentals will be better for them to see growth. Having said that, investors who are coming are also looking at the protection of their foreign currency, especially the dollar and the pound sterling and euros, just to know that in 5 years, their funds will not be eroded by the depreciation of the cedi. And when that happens, they can realize the gains and also the return that they expect by investing in their country.
Now, Alhaji, despite these ideals, these cherished ideals that you have outlined, there are also some concerns that extending the program would extend also the conditionalities that are harsh on this country. What about this situation?
In fact, what people will say now, or people are seeing now, is that they think that the situation will worsen certain conditions, but in the long run, it will bring a very stable economy to bring in the necessary partnership, the necessary fund, the necessary investor and investment to increase the job creation, to bring stability in people's lives, and also to bring constant power supply that industry needs to be able to do production, services, and even to the agriculture sector, which is the mainstay of the economy. So what the extension is just doing is to make sure that government is able to raise the necessary investment for both the energy and other infrastructure development that will bring a lot of growth. It also, by doing that, the government will also increase the growth from the 3.6, 3.7 that we did last year to a higher rate. And when this happened, it actually improved the per capita income of the citizenry.
Finally, before we go, don't you think that it is also going to stifle development of local industry or the local sector?
If you look at what the IMF is actually looking at, if you take one of the achievements that they want, safeguarding the financial sector and stability, there's no company, there's no investor, there's no person who doesn't run a bank account or run some investment with the financial sector. What the IMF, the takeover of Capital Bank and UT alone, you can see the euphoria and fear that was created in the banking sector. What the IMF is just doing is to make sure that all these systems are very, very stabilized, and you can see growth, better growth and better job creation, and that is what is very, very important. You can remember what happened when we had this doomsaw in the system. Even saloon and the mechanics at their various shops cannot have even power to do their job.
All right.
What the program is just doing is to make sure that there's stability in the energy sector, to make sure that industry, household, and everybody is able to have power to be able to help in the increasing of the per capita income and also growth.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Mahama Idrisu, for your time. Alhaji Mahama Idrisu is an investment analyst. He's been speaking to the extension of the IMF program and its impact on the economy. And that will be it for the Marketplace this afternoon. Many thanks for your time. And of course, do join me again same time tomorrow on behalf of the crew on duty here. It's good afternoon.